Something I'm not worried about, but intrigued about, James Bond. So for the past 2 years, MGM has been trying to sell the rights to James Bond as a franchise, and Fox, Sony, Universal, Warner Brothers have all been trying to acquire the rights, but haven't made an offer that MGM has bid on yet. And within the last like what 2 3 weeks, Apple and Amazon have emerged as possible suitors for the James Bond rights, which
Yeah,
I mean that would be a huge shakeup in the movie industry for a service like Apple or Amazon. I guess not a service, a brand like them, to get
yeah.
such a prestigious franchise. Daniel Craig is signed on for one more movie. It's dropping in 2019. Dave, I mean, if do you think Apple and Amazon can actually get James Bond?
Short answer, I do not. I think the answer is no, but they're very smart to try. So, like you said, this deal is for distribution. Sony has had the distribution ever since Casino Royale, so the whole Daniel Craig era. That deal expired in 2015, so after Spectre.
Mhm.
It was an up for grabs. Warner has been making a big push. Sony is still very interested. Apparently, information came out in the Sony hack that Sony was on the hook for 50% of the production budget for James Bond, of which Spectre was the most expensive Bond film ever. They only made 25% of the profit. So it's basically like $1 billion movie. After everything else, we probably take home like 40 million. So the new Sony head of Sony Pictures, not Amy Pascal, the new dude is known for pinching pennies. So perhaps that's why they haven't locked this deal down yet, because they're a little apprehensive. At the same time, Apple and Amazon are smart to go for this because franchises don't go on the open market like this, you know? Like
Right.
George Lucas sold Star Wars once.
Mhm.
Whoever bought it was never going to get rid of that shit again.
No.
And it's kind of crazy that he made $4 billion in 2012, was it? 2012.
Yeah.
And a few years later, like King, the maker of Candy Crush, goes for 15, and WhatsApp goes for 16.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Disney made a fucking steal on that. But in the meantime, James Bond is up for grabs. And someone like Apple or Amazon is making, Oscar contenders. Apple's just trying to get in the game. They've announced $1 billion in original content. Having, not original content, but a franchise would be a nice way to get themselves on the map. Plus, they'd probably get the money back on the free exposure because you just get to have James Bond use his Apple Watch and use an iPhone and get that free product placement, right? But I don't think MGM will take enough risk because what can Apple and Amazon do for James Bond that Warner and Sony can't do better? So that's why I think ultimately they'll just go with one of the big studios. Perhaps Craig convinces them to stick with Sony for maybe a one-off. I don't know, but it's very interesting. And if Amazon or Apple did manage to snag it, that would be really fascinating.
Yeah, I think if one of these we're going to, the one that I would want to is Amazon. For as much as uh, Amazon doesn't really have like the best streaming service. They don't have the catalog that Netflix has, or like
Correct.
the even Hulu. They don't have like TV shows that came out 24 hours before, so they don't have
Right.
anything like necessarily unique about them. But Amazon being a service that literally I would say almost everybody that uses the internet uses
Correct.
to buy and sell things. They could distribute, like toys, things like that, in such a more marketable way.
Mhm.
I think they're a much more attractive partner for MGM to sell with, just because they could build the Bond brand. Also, having a streaming service that is in place, even if it's not as prestigious as other ones, they could do like anthology shows, things like that, like a Money Penny show or a
Yeah.
Q show, something like that.
And that is interesting because we're in the era of connected universes and IP. The
Hmm.
Mummy, the bad Mummy movie from this year is part of the dark universe.
Yeah,
With
Dr. Jekyll, Mr.
Frank
Hyde, can't wait.
and Frankenstein. Yeah, right. But the people behind James Bond have always been resistant to that. There hasn't been a James Bond Origins
It's
TV
gonna
show
happen
yet.
though.
So, but if it was to happen, get that Money Penny show with Shonda Rhimes. I don't know, but
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. No,
Odd Job and Jaws. There's a lot of potential.
I'm
But
kind
yeah,
of
franchises
surprised.
are not available like this. So this, everyone should be jumping at it, and they are.
Yeah, I'm surprised Netflix hasn't jumped at this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe it's not in their business model at this time. They like
Yeah.
making all their own stuff they totally own. Remember, this is just distribution.
Right.
Netflix is paying less and less for movie rights because they can just create stuff that they totally own.
Right.
So I can understand why Netflix wouldn't bother.